Welcome to Signal, the podcast that raises your frequency. I'm Mory Fontanez,
And I'm Alyssa Grushka.
and today we're talking about the concept of triggers. Bean, are you ready?
Yeah, I feel triggered already. Hi, how are you?
Happy August
Happy August. My goodness
already.
gracious. Is this
What
flying
in the
by?
heck?
What in
I
the
don't
heck?
like
I
it.
will tell you, when your kids are not in camp, sure makes the summer go by fast.
Go fast or slow?
It's like a weird combo. It's like,
Yeah,
I don't know what we did with our days, but like they were gone, but they also felt like they were 4 days in one day.
right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm going to say both.
Well, Bean, it is our birthday month,
What an exciting month for us Virgs
right?
and Leos. Leos in the
Yeah.
top half,
Happy
lower half
birthday,
us.
Leos.
Happy
Happy birthday,
birthday,
Virgos. End of
Virgs.
August, Virgos, who should be
Wow,
Leos, but we're Virgos.
what an exciting month.
I know we're going to do a little episode around our birthday. I think we're going to talk about aging because that's where we're at in our
That
lives. But that's
it
not
is.
what's happening today. What's going on? How's your week
No,
been? Anything?
actually,
Oh, me?
yeah.
Oh,
No, me. That
you.
actually leads me is a perfect transition straight into my cringe, which is
Okay.
my
What?
current state of hormones.
Mm,
And hormones are a bitch. I don't care if you're 25, I don't care if you're 45. Hormones are a bitch. And I'm at
yeah.
this weird age where I'm like, am I pregnant or is this perimenopause? And I feel it
Ooh,
all the time. I'm taking pregnancy tests and I'm also going to see somebody to see if I'm in perimenopause. It's like I
that
can't
is a
win.
weird stage
It's
of
a
life.
weird stage. Like, is my
Yeah.
body stopping the baby making or is my body ramping up because it's the end of my baby making? And it's like, get it out, get it out. You know what I mean? Jelly bean.
What would happen? What if you like knew you were pregnant right now? What level of excitement would exist in you?
I think it would be a lot of feelings. It would be all the
Yeah.
feels.
This is complicated. I think
It'd be
after you've had
complicated.
a few kids and
Correct.
you're in your 40s, your whole relationship to, I think at least, I mean, let's not speak for everyone, but for me, like your whole relationship to the concept of being pregnant changes dramatically.
I also think that if this was a few years ago, it might be different, but like my kids are older now. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? And like we're
totally.
in that phase where no one's napping and we can
Yeah.
travel easier. And like
No
I don't
diapers.
have to watch them. I can run to the store and leave like my oldest one with the younger ones for a few. Like we've like entered next level parenting. So I
Yeah.
think it would be challenging. I suspect it's all just older age hormones, honestly, but like, why is it giving me acne? Like, can't you reserve that for
I've
my
heard
younger
that
hormones?
happens.
Like, what the
No,
hell?
I know it's so rude. It's
Didn't
like
I
we already
suffer?
been through that once and now
Seriously, right?
yeah,
I'm not gonna. I look at my daughter who has teenage hormones, which are honestly maybe the most insane of all hormones out
they
there.
are pretty insane.
They are wild. Um, and sometimes I'm looking at her skin. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that. Even though her skin is mostly beautiful, but she'll have breakouts. But now I'm looking at my own skin, and I'm like, what the hell? And that's another thing. I think her hormones are messing with my hormones.
I
Like,
told you she's alphaing you.
wait, why does she
You
alpha
didn't like
me?
that.
Yeah, but why does she alpha me? Because I'm
Because her
a
hormones are
pushover?
stronger. No,
Oh,
because they're coming out raging right now. And she
oh,
is, women sync up. She
yeah.
is driving the show in the house
Oh,
right now. You
wow.
better
And
get in
she's like,
line.
her hormones are like, if we're going to have acne, you're going to have acne. And I'm like, what?
Totally.
I don't want acne. I already had acne. Thanks a
Get
lot.
out of here,
Get
teenage
out of here.
hormones.
Acne? Leave, stop alphaing me. I'm good, man. I've dealt with my fair share.
I feel so bad because sometimes I'll have like a pimple and I'll be like, oh my God, this pimple. And Raina will look at me and be like, Mom,
I feel like she has good
stop.
skin. Doesn't she have
She
good
does have
skin?
good skin, but she's 15. She
Right.
has
Right.
some
It
acne.
happens.
Yeah,
True.
totally. Wow. I'm
Anyway,
sorry that the acne is contagious in your house. That's
like,
intense.
who would have
That's
thought?
cringe. That's your
That's
real
super,
cringe moment.
it's super,
Yeah.
and it's also super cringe that it's like, am I pregnant or am I menopausal? It's a fun time in life. What? All right.
Happy
You?
birthday month. My cringe has to do with how paralyzing my phobia of sharks has become.
Oh, Bean, I thought you were going to get the band.
It was too
Didn't we talk about this?
expensive. Yeah, it didn't make sense.
But tell the listeners, I've never heard of it. It's quite an interesting find.
Didn't I talk about it already?
No, I think you told my kids about it. on
Oh, that's
Zoom one
true.
day. You
Oh,
didn't
you're
talk
right. You're
about
right.
it.
Yes. Okay. So I don't know. I'm sure I've mentioned I have a massive shark phobia. Like, and obviously, when I say this, people laugh because I am a grown woman, not a 6-year-old child. But also, obviously, sharks are scary. So people are like, well, duh. But no, no, no. With me, it is a like
A trigger?
physiological. Yes, exactly. It is a physiological response that amounts to tightness in my chest and like deep anxiety. So obviously it's the summer, the kids have been in the beach, in the water, and if I don't take a moment to center myself, I am like staring at them with such vigilance and terror
Same.
that
I
I'm
love that.
afraid. I know, and I'm afraid it's contagious. Like the
Like
fear. Like I don't
pimples?
want to
Oh,
scare them. Yeah,
yes,
like
they
your
do pick up
pimples.
on your fear. Yes, they do pick
Right.
up on
And
your
then like I
fear.
don't want to scare them of the ocean and I want to have everyone have a good time. And anyway, I'm really cringed out by this because I assumed that as I got older, I would get better. And as I'm getting older, my shark fear is getting a lot worse. So there I found this
No.
thing before we went off to the Outer Banks called bands. And they're basically surfers here in California wear them a lot. It's this like
Ew.
wristband you wear around your wrist that emits a radio frequency that messes with the shark's frequency. So
Kind of
it
sad,
like
but cool.
it is a little sad. And also I did have a little like I don't want to mess with the ocean like that. Like that doesn't
Yeah.
feel right to go in there and like what about the dolphins and the ones that aren't trying
Oh,
to kill
yeah.
us? You
And
know?
they're just hopping around. Yeah.
So we didn't get the shark bands, but I watched a whole video on it. Like I became obsessed with shark bands for a week, and they had a dummy in there that was baited, and a hammerhead like came close, and then was like nope, and turned around and swam away because of the frequency it was emitting. So I don't know,
Wow.
guys. Anyone, if
Why
anyone
don't
buys a shark bands, let us
Let
know.
us know. Why don't you do like EMDR around your shark
I
phobia?
think I am gonna do it. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
because
am.
I don't
I
like
need
that for
to.
you.
I
Yeah,
don't like it either. It's
I
really
don't want that for
terrifying.
you. When you
I
said your
know.
chest got tight, I got sad.
Yeah. Or like I'll be in the water. I try to only go in the water if it is crystal clear and I can see my toes. But sometimes your whole family's in the water. What?
Or you're on the Jersey Shore. I mean, that like only exists in certain places.
That's what I mean. Like in the Caribbean, I will go in the
Right.
water easily.
Oh, okay.
Um, but you're with your family. You don't want to be like the one sitting out being
Yeah,
a
the Debbie
lame.
Downer.
So I'll go in and I'll be totally fine. I'll be having fun. And then the thought will just creep into my head and my entire body will like freeze.
I
It's
wonder
really
if you were
messed up
eaten by
being
a shark in your last life.
100%
What
in
are
my
the odds
past
of that,
life, I
though?
was eaten by a shark. I
What are
don't
the
know, but
odds
I
of
am
that?
telling you that is the only explanation.
That's bizarre. Or maybe
And
someone just
also,
scared the shit out of you when you were little and you forget about it.
well, I did grow up in the Jaws generation, which didn't help. So that means that like I was watching Jaws when I was 4.
Oh, girl, join the club,
Yeah.
among many others.
But there's so many 80s kids that don't have this same
Yeah, but
paralysis.
they
I
have
will
other
say,
things that you happen to
it's
get
true.
that one.
I will
Yeah.
say that when I meet other people who have a shark terror, I decide that they were also with me in that past life and that all of us died in that way. So
Wow,
I
that's like
that's how I
tragic.
know I've met a past life friend.
Oh, that's really sad. I'm sad for you
I know.
and
That
all
means
of your past live
you and I
friends.
weren't together in that past life, Bean.
No, I
Maybe you
don't.
were the shark.
I have no fear of sharks whatsoever.
Maybe you
Sorry.
were the shark that killed me.
That's very aggressive. I think you're
Sorry. All right.
triggering me. Anyway, that really is a great transition into why we're
Great.
doing this episode is
Let's
that
do it.
people use that word like recklessly almost now when it is a
Mm.
serious issue, like how I just
Recklessly. That's a
recklessly
strong
well
accusation.
okay, give me a better word. They use
No,
it
I'm actually love that it's reflecting how you really feel. I want you to tell us more.
not recklessly, nonchalantly, like I just did when I was like, "Am
Yeah.
I triggering you for your sharks?" But triggers are real things. Like, yeah, I don't know why I
Yeah.
did that weird voice. Like,
I loved
I
it.
got whiny.
Loved.
Um,
His name
trigger
is
is a real
Lewis.
thing. Who? My voice?
Yeah.
Lewis? I didn't even
Right?
understand. Yeah,
But do
but
you
I
get
get it now. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, Phil. Or Gerald. Okay.
Okay. Sorry, any
So,
Lewises, please don't stop listening to us.
um, Anyway, so whiny guy Gerald does not fair for people who are really struggling. I'm going to actually explain what it is first before, even though
Great.
I think
Tell
most
us
people
why.
know what a trigger is, but I think they think of it as more simple because even when I was trying to think of examples of my own triggers, I could only think of things that weren't really triggers because it's so overused in that
Oh,
way.
interesting. Okay.
Yes. Hold on while I
What does
pull
it
this up.
mean exactly,
I will pull it
Bean?
up. A trigger is a stimulus that elicits a reaction in the context of mental illness, which is a big space for these triggers, so it should be taken seriously, is often used to mean something that brings on or worsens symptoms. This often happens to people with a history of trauma or who are recovering from mental illness, self-harm, addiction, and or eating disorders. There's all kinds of triggers. There's external triggers, which is like sounds and sights and smells and things like that,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is um, which is a pretty common one. There's internal ones, which is just like um, strong feelings that come up inside based on past experiences. One example I read that really explains this is making a doctor's appointment after some sort of negative medical experience or like diagnosis,
Right.
how you can feel like paralyzed inside about
Yeah.
making another appointment because you are scared.
Right.
Trauma triggers also, I think, pretty well known based on past trauma. A good one and that people know about too is the sound of fireworks for causing issues for veterans who have been in
Yes.
war.
Yeah.
And then symptom triggers, which I didn't really think about. How a physical change can trigger a larger mental health issue. The example there was like a lack of sleep can really impact somebody with bipolar.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So those were my big things. And also, interestingly enough, mental health professionals don't know yet how triggers form. So there's like all different kinds. Some researchers believe that the brain stores memories from a traumatic event differently than memories of a non-traumatic event.
Mm-hmm. That
So
makes
that,
sense.
yeah, so that when you are triggered, it goes back to that part of your brain. And it's the only
Yeah.
way you can operate.
Yeah. Well, in somatics, which is
Yeah.
the study of the body, the mind body spirit connection,
Yeah.
the idea is that the tissues in your body
Yeah.
hold your trauma.
Right.
So if you face a traumatic event as a child, or, and again, in my work, I define traumatic event as anything that created harm to your system,
Right.
right? So that
Right.
is neglect. That is, verbal,
Yes.
physical abuse, obviously, but also just not receiving the kind of love and care that you needed or
Right.
understanding as a child.
Right.
Um, but that your body in that moment, in the tissues around your heart, for example, learn to contract to protect that part of you. And so it's a practice that your tissues have got into to create protection, that contraction practice. And so oftentimes what happens is if you're something is reminding you of that sadness, your body will remind you. You'll get a
Right.
tightness in your chest or your shoulders or your back because the tissues in your body are contracting as they have been for decades, to protect you.
That's really sad. Right. And that just shows how
But
serious,
brilliant, sad, but also
brilliant. Your
the
body
body is
works
brilliant.
brilliant. But the point
Yeah.
being that triggers are very serious, that it is a
Yeah,
real thing
totally.
that we're all just throwing around all the time. But this is like some serious shit, man.
What do you feel like when you hear people say triggered that you are like, oh, you're misusing it or you're making light of it?
Like one
Like
of the
when, yeah.
well, it was me. I was actually trying to think about while we were leading up to this episode, and I
Yeah.
was like, I'm really triggered when I hold the door for people and they don't acknowledge it. And then I was like, that's not a
Mm.
fucking trigger. That just makes me mad. It's not a trigger though.
I
And I
think
think people
that's where
say
it's
that shit
being
all the time.
misused.
Right.
I
That's what I'm
think I
saying.
think yeah, I think what we're hearing today in like the common language
Yeah.
is I'm triggered is synonymous for I'm annoyed,
Right.
I'm frustrated, you've
Right.
made me uncomfortable.
Correct. But it's not truly relating back to some past experience or some physical sensation. It's just like I'm triggered. Right. It's
I'm
overused
going to
and
argue that it
unconscious.
does relate to a past
Yeah.
experience or a belief system though. Like
Okay.
I
Okay.
agree that I especially with the way you just defined it and set it up for us around it being connected to something deeply traumatic,
Right.
mental health, mental illness,
Yeah.
that it is being overused and therefore diluted for sure. But
Right.
I do think that
I
if
agree
you're
with you.
saying I'm triggered because I opened the door, held the door open, and I didn't get a thank you, it is like it wouldn't bother you unless it was connected to an experience from the past or a belief
Like what?
system, not feeling seen, not feeling that there was
Oh,
gratitude for you at some point. It
oh,
wouldn't bother you unless it triggered something deeper. I believe that
I
to
don't
the
know how
ends of
I
the
feel.
earth.
I don't know how I feel about that because I just kind of like that's a very situational thing. I'm kind of like, it's not, it doesn't feel deeper to me. It just feels like this wasn't my job to hold the door for you. So just
Right. But
acknowledge it. I just did it
other
to be
people
kind.
might not feel the same depth of frustration as you do about
100%.
opening the door, right?
100%.
Which means it's attached to something that is
Oh,
creating a deeper frustration.
yeah.
Like I
I
always
hear you.
say in my work, you don't have a visceral reaction to something unless it has a deep root within you.
Interesting. I definitely
Think
have a
about it.
visceral reaction to it. But
Yeah.
like,
So
and I know what you're saying now about me, but I still don't know how it lands with me.
so
But
I
yes,
will say
continue.
I
Yeah.
actually like I the idea of the word trigger being overused doesn't bother me so much because
Oh,
it makes me feel like we are more and more aware of our own mental health, of our own internal struggles. Like we are naming at least um, an experience that's happening in our inner system externally. We're finding a way to name it. Whereas that was not common 30, 40 years ago, where something is happening in your internal world and you just suck it up, or you think you're not normal, you think you've got to be perfect and happy all the time. I think that the way that right now we're talking about being triggered and our mental health is at least normalizing, hey, everyone struggles with moments of anxiety, depression, being upset, being uncomfortable, being frustrated. It's not all smiles and perfection, and that's what
right.
success is.
I love that, but then just come up with another word for it. And
Cool.
don't,
I think you
like you
should do
said,
that.
and don't
Start a movement.
dilute don't dilute the true meaning of trigger for people who are truly suffering with triggers.
Yeah. Okay,
Okay?
that's fair.
Don't be a
So
jerk.
for the context of this conversation though,
Yeah.
I want to get into how people can start to get clear on what is triggering them. Are you
Okay.
comfortable if we use that word broadly for the rest of the
Oh,
conversation?
yes, yes, yes.
Okay.
I agree. And I think it's important though that we're also defining and allowing people to understand. I mean, they can use whatever language they want.
Yeah. Um all right. Well, look, I want to get it a little bit into how I use triggers in the work of coaching people to heal their limiting beliefs and therefore hear their higher selves. And that is to really become acquainted with the part of you that does react to an external stimulus and get really acquainted with it. Like to be really aware that if I am having lunch with Bean and Bean says,
So fun.
let me think of an example. I'm having lunch with Bean and Bean says something
I want me to
like,
lie.
I don't remember, I'll tell a story and Bean will say, I don't remember that. Right. If I am, which happens
It's
all the
on
time,
brand. Yeah.
the rest of this story is not true because I don't get upset. But if I'm having a visceral reaction to my best friend
Right.
telling me she doesn't remember something that I was a part of,
Right.
that is an invitation to me in the work that I do to
Right.
say, wait a minute, what's going on with me that
Right.
has triggered such a deep emotional response to this external stimulus of my best friend saying she doesn't remember this time together?
Right.
And that exploration really helps you to understand where inside yourself is asking for your attention and asking to be healed, right? So
Yeah.
let's just
Yeah.
follow this example. If
Okay.
that were true and
Let's
I
just
were to go
clarify
do,
again that it's not true.
it's not true. It is not true. I actually find it hilarious. We call you Dory for a reason, that you don't remember anything. But if that were true and I were doing that exploration, maybe for me, if I really sat with it and I was like, God, I'm really, really upset every time I feel like Melissa forgets an experience we had together. What is this inside me? Who inside me is this upset?
Right. Right.
In my work, what we do together is like go back and find what is the origin moment of this feeling of being upset that someone's forgotten something about me.
How do you do that? How do you get to the origin
I
moment? That's hard.
guarantee when you have a visceral reaction, if I were to ask you, okay, take a minute, take a deep breath, what is the earliest memory of that feeling? You'd be able to tell me.
I want to do this with you with my door exercise later,
Your door.
off air.
Oh,
My holding the door
okay.
thing, because I
Yeah.
literally can't even, like, I know where you're thinking based on what you think, but I couldn't even like begin to get close to what I think would cause that. I just think I don't like when people don't acknowledge when you do something like holding a
I
door.
think I think when you're starting to practice this work, it's
Yeah.
better to start with something that truly is a visceral reaction, whereas the door thing for you is a light frustration. So it's gonna be harder to find the link. But if you are interested in this exploration, start
Yeah.
with something that really does like
Okay.
upset you when it happens, like
Okay.
really feels deeply upsetting.
Yeah.
Um, and what happens is if I ask a client or myself, I do this on myself all the time. What's the earliest memory of this like feeling like someone's forgotten you? Instantly, I'm 5 years old.
Christine.
Like instantly, I'm 5 years old, sitting on the couch alone because mom had to work and sister was older, like whatever, right? So my point is like, if I am having this deep emotional reaction to my best friend who I know loves me,
Right.
not remembering something we did together, that is an invitation that there's another part of me, a much younger part of me that is still stuck in a moment of pain that is
Yeah.
asking for my attention in that moment.
Yeah.
And that is how I think the work of triggers is so deeply enlightening and
Yeah.
transformative because it's bringing forward a forgotten part of you
Right.
that is still very much in pain. And by the way, still very much in control of your decisions,
Yeah. And a part of your
right?
DNA that needs tending to.
Yeah. Because then if I have the story, well, I don't deserve to be remembered, right? As a child, then I'm going to do things based on that story until I interrupt that story. I'm going to seek validation. I'm going to want to be included. I'm going to take things. Oh, here's a really great example that is true. I think I said this on another episode. I have a really hard time being left out of stuff. Remember? And you were like, I
Right.
love being left out. I realized that it's because of that 5-year-old who's like, no, 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 don't leave me on this couch by myself. 100%. That's what it is. And knowing that allows me to go take care of her rather than blame the people who, well, for whatever reason, didn't include me, which is
Right.
never nefarious usually.
So let's say though, I think a huge takeaway from this episode is going to be one, learning how to deal with your own internal triggers, and
Yeah.
what's going on with you, but also we trigger people all day unconsciously, right?
Yeah.
And often unintentionally. I truly believe it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
how do you know? How do you know if you're triggering somebody? I think we do it
Yeah.
all the
That's
time,
a
and people get triggered
really
and
good.
then like walk away all triggered, and you don't even know you did anything.
Totally. That's such a good question. And listen, I'm going to start with the most important takeaway to that question, which
Yeah.
is it's not your responsibility.
Oh, right.
Like other people, well, let me just give this
Well,
caveat.
if
Let
you
me give
don't
this
know,
caveat.
if it's
Yes,
unintentional,
correct.
correct.
If you are not intending to create harm
Right. Okay.
and you do something that triggers someone, that is not your
True.
responsibility. It is your responsibility to listen to them and be there for them,
Right.
but it is their responsibility, like I said, in the example of the 5-year-old sitting on the couch. It's not the responsibility of the friends who didn't invite me to the thing
Right. Right.
that I'm triggered. It's me. Like in fact, I think part of the reason that we can be such a-holes to each other and judgmental is that we don't take accountability for our own triggers. We want
Right.
other people to fix the things that are hurting
Totally
us
true.
for us. We want
Right.
to control their behavior. We want to control the
Right.
way that they interact. This doesn't mean you don't have boundaries.
Right.
Let's just hold some complexity here. You have boundaries, but you getting triggered by someone else's behavior who is not purposefully intending
Right.
harm is not on them. That is an exploration on you. So how do you know you're triggering other people? I mean, first of all, I'll tell you this. We are all intuitive beings. You do
Right.
know. Like if you slow down and really
Right.
connect to the other person that you're interacting with, you
Right.
will notice a shift in their frequency. You'll
Right.
notice,
But what if it's like
okay,
a
I said a thing.
stranger? I don't want to trigger a stranger either. I guess though it's their responsibility, like you said, to do the self-exploration and then to verbalize to
Yeah.
somebody like this is a trigger for me,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, you may have
And
noticed I got really quiet at that dinner the other night. It's
right,
because this conversation about travel triggered my sadness that I can't afford it right now. You know what I mean? Like that's on the person that had the experience, not
right,
the group
right,
of people who didn't weren't aware of it. So I think the biggest takeaway here is let's stop um, putting our triggers and our needs on other people. We
yeah,
are accountable for being triggered and for going back and finding the aspect of us that is sad, lonely, neglected, harmed, hurt, and having opening a dialogue between us and that self
right,
and doing that work internally. It is not someone else's responsibility. That said, I think that it's also really important in intimate relationships to discuss your triggers really openly so that at least you're aware with your partner or your best friend or
right,
whatever, whoever you're spending a lot of time with that you adore, intimate relationships,
right,
that you're aware that this is what this person's operating system is and that you can take their operating system into consideration. I'm not saying enable them, but take it into consideration. So, for example, TJ and I are really clear about each other's triggers. And
yeah,
for TJ, it's the concept of it's never enough.
right,
I'm not enough. It's never enough. Right. Hopefully he's okay with me sharing this publicly. I think he knows already that this happens. Um, but that means that if, for example, he has done something for our business,
right,
like he has gone and done something super detailed, like created an amazing finance spreadsheet,
right,
and I get in there and I find three or four things that don't make sense,
right.
right? Sometimes the immediate response in him is, it's never enough. I spent 8 hours on this and it's still not
Right.
enough, right?
Oh,
Is
TJ.
it my responsibility that he's seeing it that way? No. But being aware that that's his operating system reminds me to express a ton of gratitude first.
Right.
Like, hey, I can really see by looking at this that you spent a lot of time on this. I
Right.
really appreciate that. By the way, this part of it doesn't make sense. Can you clarify?
I think a lot of people, especially in marriages in particular, don't want to do that because they're like, it's not my job to tiptoe around or coddle. But I actually think, because I've been attempting to practice this as well, um, having greater perspective for their operating systems
Yeah,
gives you tools to
yeah,
better address your own needs and concerns. Like
totally.
you want to say, like, I still need this done on the
Yeah,
finance sheet. So my best way of doing that is by taking into consideration not to just come at you and say, I still need these four things. You're going to
yeah,
say, this is awesome. This looks great. Can we also do this? Not like
yeah,
this was, you totally missed this stuff. Because
yeah.
otherwise, I think a lot of, and I could be wrong, but I think a lot of women in particular already feel like they're mothering enough that they don't want to have to like mother in that way. But it's not, if you really reflect, it's not really mothering. It's really being aware of what you're working with.
Absolutely. And being aware of being able to acknowledge in a way the person requires and still state your needs. It's and. You don't have to forego the stating of the
So,
needs to acknowledge the way that the person's being triggered.
so when someone comes to you and says, someone in an intimate relationship, but I also have another question after this. If they come to you and they say, this really triggers me when XYZ, or I'm really triggered by, then what? You can't just be like, well, I'm never going to do that again.
Well, I think that's two things. One is just like, I hate this word because this concept is overused, but it is holding space
Yeah.
for the conversation.
That's what
Like,
we were
and
just
the,
saying. Yeah.
yeah, and the way that you can do that is listening and being curious. Curiosity. Oh, really? What was it about it that like felt that way? Oh, yeah. What does that feel like? That's so interesting. Like just genuinely holding the space for the person to have that feeling without making it about you.
And if it
What
is an
happens?
intimate relationship, you should care.
Correct. But what happens is when someone comes to us, especially if they're not being accountable for being triggered, which means they're using language that says, you made me feel insignificant,
Right.
then that's an accusation. What
Right.
happens is we get defensive because we make it immediately about us. If the person has the emotional intelligence or has listened to this episode and is coming to you and saying, we had that interaction last night and I felt really insignificant, then it's almost
Right.
easier to be like, why? Where's that coming from? How often does that happen? Like, really hold
Yeah.
space by asking questions. But if the person is, you made me feel insignificant, it's, you kind of got to take a deep breath and be like, still try and not make it about you and invite the questions and the internal exploration to turn it around and really make it about them, because that's what it is. It's about them. So that is the first thing, is just listen, really
Yeah.
listen, and
Even
give
in
them space.
marriage counseling, they always say use I statements. Don't use you statements.
Exactly.
Because
Exactly. I
it's
say that
immediately you
in
get defensive. The other partner
right.
gets defensive when you're blaming them.
Right. I do a lot of conflict resolution, and that is our number one rule.
It
You
is
have to say
interesting.
I dot dot dot. Um, the second thing is just repair. Like, really asking, okay, if I created harm, how can I repair it? What do you need to create repair in this moment? And let them tell you what they need to repair whatever harm was created. Or what do you need me to be mindful of to help you as you're working through this trigger?
Right.
So, like
That's a
in
good
that
one.
example, or last night I was at a dinner, my friend knows that I hate being left out, and she was talking about this party. And I said, what party? And she immediately said, you were out of town, remember? I invited you. And I was like, oh, no, no, I'm not mad. I just was trying to, but I was like, wow, she
You were like,
really
what
knows.
party?
Yeah, I didn't even say it that way, but she knows because I've told her. So anyway, it's like, just what do you need to,
Right.
how can I help you as someone who loves you? What can I
Right.
do to keep that in mind without taking full responsibility for it?
That actually, this leads me to my next question, which was, what if it's not an intimate relationship, but somebody you care about and somebody you interact with a decent amount? Like, what if you don't have that level of curiosity, but you also don't want to trigger them? It's more of like an acquaintance kind of, like I have several people in mind that like I wouldn't want to be rude, but like I'm not all up in their private space. You know what I mean? I wouldn't ever want to hurt them intentionally. And if they said to me, you're triggering me, like, would I be like, well, what can I do to not do that? Do you exert that
This
energy with
is,
acquaintances? Help
I
me.
mean, listen, this might be a different episode, but I am increasingly getting to a place in my life
Yeah,
where if I don't have curiosity about you, I just
you're
don't
not
want
in my
that
life.
relationship at all.
Interesting.
Like,
I think
truly,
it's a lot
it's
of
just,
default relationships. Like our kids are friends, so we are together sometimes. You know what I mean? Like even if I wouldn't
yeah.
choose to be around you, we are together. You know
Yeah,
what I
I
mean?
just think that if
But
it's
you're right.
that
Yeah. Yeah.
separate, like truly you triggering them is something that is 100% theirs. Again, if you're not trying to create
Totally.
harm,
Totally.
that's just that to me is you can't take any responsibility.
Yeah.
Again,
Right.
unless you're being an asshole. You can't take
Right.
any responsibility for them getting triggered. And also, you're not in their inner world, and you're saying you're not curious about their inner world. So it's like the level of energy exchange has to be really low. I think there's
Totally.
always, for me, there's always compassion and there's always
Yeah. Yeah. Be
non judgment
kind.
towards everyone.
Yeah. Be
But if I'm
kind.
not curious about you, then I'm not trying to assist you in
Interesting. That is
not
a good
getting triggered
episode.
either.
Let's do that episode. I bet that would
Okay.
inspire a lot of people because I do think a lot of people waste their energy on bullshit relationships.
Totally. Yeah, I have zero interest in that anymore. Zero.
Ouch. Oof. So and I want to hear more about you being triggered. I feel like you have concrete examples.
Oh,
I do have one concrete example, actually.
okay.
Would you like it?
Yeah.
I am very, very triggered, and it's a real problem for me, truly triggered by lateness. I
Yes.
grew up, I love my father dearly, but everyone who knows him knows he is chronically late. Like we would miss flights, we would get to places as they were closing.
Yeah.
We were rushing a lot, which I did just read creates a lot of anxiety in a child when
Yeah.
they are rushed a lot as a child.
Yeah.
So now I have a chronic problem. Like I've gotten a little more lax as I've had kids and it's harder to get out of the house and stuff, but like I get severe physical discomfort when I'm late.
Yeah.
Even if I'm only going to be like 15 minutes late,
Yeah.
I almost feel like I can't breathe. And the
Yeah.
airport is like, my husband Corey is like, he can't, because I like to arrive like 8 hours early, because I have physically run
I would
through
kill
with
you.
luggage um, to get to my gate that we have missed before. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I
Yeah.
can't, like, that feeling is so unsettling. And I
It's
know
unsafe.
it's unsafe, and I know where
Yeah.
it comes from. And I, again, love my dad, he's great, but it really developed a tremendous issue. Like, I would be the last one picked up sometimes, and like it developed a major issue for me. I'm always
Huh.
like first in line to pick up my kids, and
Yeah.
because of it. um
Yeah.
so I have this awareness of where it came from. I know exactly what I needed in that moment, in that time of my life, but it hasn't shifted my need to still be early slash on time as an adult, and my
Yeah.
discomfort like with cutting it close. Even my husband, who's Corey, who's never late, he's typically very on time. We actually often have disagreements because he'll like wait till the last minute, but he isn't late. But I
Yeah.
just like to be
You
so
get
like in the
anxious.
car ahead of time. Yeah, yeah. That I don't know how to remedy that, like even with the awareness. Any
Yeah.
tips? Any tips,
Oh, are
coach?
you asking? Or is this has it's turned into a coaching session?
It was a share and a
It was a
coaching, because
share
I
and
think,
maybe some tips.
and maybe some tips, because I think that like could, this mentality could be applied. Like, a lot of people are unaware of their triggers, but I think a lot of people also know where their triggers came from, like especially if it's
Yeah.
trauma. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I'm
once
going
you
to
have
tell
the
you the same thing I
awareness,
said
okay,
about the
great.
other part, which is like you have to pause and take a deep breath and acknowledge that little kid who's running through the
In the
airport
moment.
and just let her know in that moment, take a deep breath and be like, you're okay. You're safe.
Yeah,
We
I
are
never do
safe.
that.
That's
I'm
what
like,
you need to
hurry
do.
up, everyone. I make it
That you know what you're
worse.
doing? You're letting her run the show.
Yeah, totally.
When
And
you're
then I get
screaming,
into
hurry
like,
up, everyone, that is
yeah,
her, which means
yeah.
she's not getting the acknowledgement and healing. She's still
Okay.
having to be vigilant and do her job. And she's just a little kid. So when
Even
you can take a
talking
deep
about it.
breath, yeah. And
Yeah.
like I said, somatically, you feel it in your body. Where do you feel it in
Yeah.
your body right now?
Chest.
Great. So put your hands on your chest, take a deep breath, put some pressure on your chest, visualize that little girl, and just say, I've got you. You're okay.
Not only have
You're
I got
safe.
you, I'm on time. Like, I'm a very prompt individual.
Yeah,
So I
we are
really
safe.
got you. Yeah, we are safe, because I
Yes.
really make it a point to be time, be have respect for other people's time as
But
well.
even when it's out of your control and you're with other people and they're running late, just applying some pressure to your chest or wherever you're feeling the contraction in your body and just saying, I am right here. I have got you. Visualize that younger self and just let her know you're safe. It's not the same.
It's not the same. You're right.
No,
It's totally not.
that's my
I
tip.
love you, Dad.
Um,
I love you. My dad listens all the
love
time.
you,
I love you,
Bruce.
Dad.
Bruce, it's okay. We forgive you.
All right, I
Well, I
want
don't know.
yours.
Guess mine. What
I
would
don't
you
know.
say? I mean, you know me better than most people. What do you think are my bigger triggers?
Sharks.
You know, sharks.
Abandonment. Um, but I don't know how that like would show up in your daily life, like how you could interact with somebody and they could trigger you to feel abandonment issue.
I
Um,
think it's my like FOMO. I think it's my wanting to be included.
oh, you do? Interesting.
Yeah,
Um, I think for a while I don't feel this way anymore, since you're in a very stable and healthy marriage, but a validation from like men, romantic partners. Um,
absolutely.
which I attribute to your father not being
Yeah.
around when you were younger.
Well, the
Okay.
trigger is like there's not going to be security in the
Right.
home, or there's
Right.
not going to be there's going to be heartbreak or romantic instability unless
Right.
I just put up with whatever. I guess that's a
Whatever.
limiting belief system.
Not a trigger. I don't want to
Well,
misuse the word.
the limiting belief system was I need a man around for there to be stability in the home.
Right. Right.
The trigger then was, oh shoot, he's mad at me. I'm
Oh,
panicking that he's mad.
I see.
I'm triggered.
Oh, interesting. All right. Can you just tell me one and stop making me guess and feel like I'm being quizzed on you
My
and your,
biggest trigger is money and poverty.
oh, money. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
So
feel like
it's
that's a
like
lot of
if
people's
I
trigger. Yeah.
I just did this somatic exercise with my coach where she had to say the thing I was most afraid of to see where my body felt it. And it was, she goes, what is it? And I said, say, there's not enough money to pay the bills. And literally, as she said it, I felt nauseous. My heart was like closing in on itself. Like my whole system was like, SOS, I'm shutting down. That one sentence is my biggest trigger.
So what did you do out of curiosity? Same.
That work is about sitting with the feeling and really
Yeah.
trying to understand what is the feeling and like what do you really need, and letting the feeling just
B.
be witnessed. Like the idea of somatics and somatic healing is to get in touch with the feeling, witness the feeling, because as you
Right.
witness the feeling, it can begin to loosen and
Right.
make room for other paradigms and other perceptions and possibilities to enter the picture.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I think these
But
were
we
all great
listen,
tips. What?
and I think like listeners, just stop for a minute and ask,
Yeah.
like, if we could talk to you and you were sitting here having coffee with us, we
Yeah.
would be so curious. We'd be asking you the same question. What do
Yeah.
you
What are your
notice
tricks? Yeah.
creates the most visceral reaction in you, and who can you attribute that to? Which younger self in there is actually the one having the panic attack about it?
Yeah.
And how do you stop and just like see them and witness and be there? And like I just showed Melissa, just like, I got you. I'm right here.
Right.
You're okay. You're safe.
Yeah. And there are ways to alter your own behavior as an adult. Like I have made it a point to be very on time my whole life
Right.
to help, like, I don't know, like lower. I feel like if I was late, it would exacerbate everything.
Oh, yeah. Your triggers drive you for sure. I think that's why
Yeah.
I have been so driven in my career,
Yeah.
and why I
You
have
are a badass
been in
bitch. Yeah.
situations where I am the sole caregiver for my children. Not anymore. I'm remarried and I'm grateful to TJ for like all of the contributions.
Right.
But for a very long time, I was like, I am
This
running
is
this
me.
household. We will never go without. And I will push myself in my career to make sure that happens. So I think our triggers are also motivators in a lot
Yeah.
of ways.
Yeah.
All right, Bean,
Fascinating.
this wouldn't be an episode without your famous takeaways. So without further ado,
Truthfully, I think often my takeaways are relatively similar because a lot of it ties into the work that you do. You so often talk about bringing awareness to things. And I
yeah,
don't, but then every episode and every new thing we talk about, I don't think about awareness. I don't know how. And then you say it, I'm like, awareness. Every time, like, pay attention. I don't in that moment. My biggest
yeah,
takeaway was when you said in the moment, I was like, yeah, in the moment, that's when I'm the most frazzled. When Corey's like, not, Corey's like, I have to go to the bathroom. I'm like, now? Like, I don't
yeah,
think like he's still going to be out in time. He's never late.
yeah,
I have the evidence. He's not late. Like, he operates that way, talking about operating systems. I operate this way. Like, maybe I should just go wait in the car, take a deep breath, let myself know you're okay instead of pacing in the house, asking him when he's going to be done. Like, take a pause, take a beat.
yeah,
Don't get yourself overhyped because that's not fixing anything. So
yeah.
just paying attention, being mindful.
Beautiful. As always, guys, thank you for listening to Signal this week. As always, if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone that you care about. We so appreciate the support. And also leave us a review anywhere that you can rate or review the podcast. We would so appreciate that too. And we will be back again next week with another episode. See you then. Bye.
Bye.